Welcome to the Authentic Self Revolution. I'm Carly, your guide on this journey to genuine living and the real wealth of freedom and fulfillment. In a world that just loves to tell us who we should be, we're here to remember who we truly are. We're here for the questioners, the misfits, and anyone who's ever felt there must be more to life than following this script. Each week, we peel back the layers of shoulds and musts and dive into practical ways to live more authentically. If you're listening only and want to see my face, you can head over to my YouTube channel, Owning Authenticity, where you'll find this podcast along with a treasure trove of other content aimed at uncovering who you truly are. Your authentic self is waiting. So let's dive in. In this interview episode of the Authentic Self Revolution, I am joined by Coco Rivard. Coco is the host of the Self-Care Sermon podcast, a sanctuary to discuss self-love and self-care practices meant to amplify your authentic radiance. You can see why I have her on the podcast. After working in the beauty industry for over 20 years as a certified makeup artist and licensed esthetician, and becoming a Chopra certified health instructor in 2023, Coco takes a holistic view on self-care and helps uncover what it means to be inwardly beautiful rather than just outwardly beautiful. Let's dive into this amazing interview. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome, Coco, to the podcast. It's so awesome to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited for our conversation today and feel honored to be on your podcast.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much. I feel like there's a million different ways that we could dive into this, but I would love to hear about your authenticity journey and coming into awareness of like who you really are, and maybe one of the more recent ahas or like moments of breakthrough around like you understanding yourself in a deeper way that has just like lit you up or has unleashed some new joy or any of that, really.
Yeah, I think authenticity for me is something that I have been trying to understand and sort out in my own life for so long. Being in the beauty industry for 20 plus years and being in this space that is dominated by physical appearance and comparison and what we were shown in magazines or nowadays what we're shown in social media, and having conversations with probably in 20 years, thousands of women who I've either done their makeup or had them in the spa or had them, in the consultation room when I was working for a plastic surgeon. And I always felt out of place in a lot of those settings. And everybody wanting to look a certain way or, showing the same pictures of this is what I want my makeup to look like, or this is what I want my boobs to look like after surgery, or this is, all of these different things. And I just felt such a disconnect myself with what they were showing or what they were talking about. And so I went through years of, well, okay, maybe this just isn't the job. Like maybe I just shouldn't be doing makeup in this setting anymore. Like that it doesn't feel like I totally belong. So let me try this day spa. Okay, I like this. This feels okay, but still just square peg, round hole. Something's missing. Like I love this. This is my life. This is my passion. I'm a, certified makeup artist and a licensed esthetician. And okay, let's try a medical spa route. And then let's try a dermatology route. And then let's try a plastic surgeon route. And so I've really been through the industry in all of these different ways and still felt that disconnect and still felt like I was the odd man out or out of place. And so my authenticity journey really began with me saying, I love the beauty industry. I love self care. I love all of these things that we're doing, but I'm getting the most fulfillment when I'm having these deeper conversations with the women in my makeup chair or
Mm.
with the woman on the table who's going to get a facial. And I realized that it's when I started to develop this concept of not worrying so much about being beautiful, but more about being beautiful. And how can we fill up our own cups? How can we fill from the inside out with beautiful things, whether it's music or art or nature or saying yes to ourselves? And that's really how I have tried to find my authentic place and my truth within the beauty industry and finding the balance with all of these things. But it is a journey. It is something that I'm still trying to figure out is what is true for me. And I think the biggest thing for me right now is what is true for me today and what feels authentic for me today. You know, I think we attach our identities to so many different things. And I was a straight A student and an athlete, and I'm a licensed esthetician, and I'm a certified makeup artist, and I've been doing makeup for all of these years. But what happens if I don't want to do those things anymore? Or what happens if,
Mm.
you know, I'll give a silly example, but my favorite color is black. I love black. My nails are black. Love it. I everything about it. But what happens, and you know, the people in my life know that. Like it's an ongoing joke. If we flashed over to my closet, it all looks the exact same. Everything's black. But what if today I felt like wearing a purple sequin jumpsuit? Because that's what feels authentically true for me today. Like, am I okay, even though there's this identity of me with my favorite color being black and that's what I wear and that's what I do? But what if today something else feels more authentic? And so I think that's something I've been playing with is even though friends or family or loved ones or people at work have an idea of me, of what makes Coco Coco and how I dress or how I act or how I talk. But if I want to change my mind, if I want to try something else, if I want to, you know, I've been blonde for, I don't know, 20 years, 15 years. If I want to randomly impromptu dye my hair red because that feels good, awesome. And so figuring out what feels authentic to me right now at this stage in my life and being okay with changing that and experimenting and exploring that because I think that we can get really tied to, hey, this is who I am, so this is how I am being authentic to me. But we get so attached the identity that can at times become incongruent with authenticity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I was gonna go down a whole nother rabbit hole of I also feel like some people use the word of, you know, authenticity, like it can be kind of a buzzword right now of how can I be authentic online? But even that again is attaching an identity to, well, I have to be different from that person in order to be authentic, you know, where we're just now authenticity itself is becoming an identity rather than what is true for me today now.
Mm, so freaking good. So good. I have so many thoughts, and I'm going to try to herd them all back together and reflect on a couple of pieces that like literally blew my mind because I've been on this authenticity journey for years. And the way you just described that, like I just had like a whole blooming of understanding where you bring comparison into it, which is definitely something that fits here at the center of this authenticity journey, is like the comparison we have to culture or to our friends or to our family or like whatever. And like that is kind of the first box we break out of, so to speak, along our authenticity journey is like, you're allowed to be different from your culture, your family, whatever. But I had never gone to this like next stage, at least not consciously, to understanding like and thinking about it in these same terms of like, right, but then your authentic self becomes a box that
Yeah,
now you've got to stay in your authenticity. Like that it
right.
could become stagnant, that it could become the limitation is like your own idea of who your authentic self even is.
Hmm.
And like for a while, I was using this tagline, and have stopped using it, but like, I feel like it fits so perfectly here is like authenticity just means honest.
Hmm.
Like they're just synonyms for each other, authenticity and honest. I would also add like authenticity just means love. Like, you know, what feels loving to you today? Purple sequin
Yeah,
jumpsuit? Check. You know,
yeah.
like there is no rigid box, but to your point about identity and like the stabilizing thread or the foundation that our identity is, it like gives us a way to relate to other people. It gives us a way to even relate to ourselves. Updating our identity is not something that in culture we're like taught how to do and like how
Right,
to grow and change. And in fact, like there are people who like I have a lot of Gemini in my chart, for example, and like the word flaky gets thrown around. Like you're constantly changing and you're two-faced and you say this and then you say this. And it's like, dude, well, that's what I meant on that day. And then the next day
right.
when I said something different, I meant that, you know? Like it's about like relating to other people and like almost the identity helps us to have a stable foundation, but it also helps other people to kind of like put us in a box. They have us figured out. We have ourselves figured out. We put ourselves in the box. But then,
Hmm.
yeah, what happens when that's not it anymore? You know, or
Hmm.
like I have a random day where I want to dye my hair red, or I want
Yeah.
to leave this job and go to this place, and I want to start this thing, and now I'm into this hobby, and like that your own authentic self can become the box that you need to break out of. Like
Yeah.
that thought, I feel like I'm gonna be dining on that for a long time to come. So thank you for connecting those dots for all of us.
Yeah. I mean, it's again, it's just something I'm working on in my own life. And it's like you said, we're such a label happy society. Like, I need to know who Carly is so I can put her here. And then it's like, I can safely understand how to relate to that box of Carly. Like, I know how to engage with you. I know how to talk to you. I know it's predictable, right? It's safe. If
Yeah.
I can know who you are going to be today and tomorrow and the next day. And so I think that that's what we do to ourselves is maybe to make other people feel safe in relating to us and predictable. And that might not be authentic to this version of me today. I love what you said of, authenticity is honesty and it's love. But if your definition of authenticity is all about how you want other people to view you and you don't actually have a connection to self and you don't actually have you're not tuned into your own values, you're not tuned into your own intuition, you're not tuned into a place of self-love, who you're not, you might be being authentic because you're saying that to the rest of the world, and this is who I am, and making this declaration about your identity, but there's a disconnect from actual authenticity, self love, self honesty, and that relationship with yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, and another thing I love to say is like the only thing that stops us from learning more about ourselves is believing that we already know everything,
Hmm.
and this idea of like stagnant identity, of like your authentic self, you're actually like living out the version of you from like 20 years ago or 10 years ago
Hmm.
or a year ago or whatever. And embracing this idea of like fluidity and
Hmm.
riding the wave of self and
Hmm.
allowing for it to just be an ever evolving subject, you know?
Right.
And we were not raised like this. Okay. Almost
Hmm.
no one was raised with this kind of idea. Like there's right and there's wrong. It's black and
Right.
white, good and bad. I wonder, would you be willing to share a little bit of like your backstory and what conditioning that gave you, like what ideas that gave you that then as you've grown into, where you are now in your journey, it's always going to be evolving. But like as far as you've come, what have you had to unravel in order to get to this point?
Yeah.
That's a big question.
I it is, and I'll try and
Oh,
bring it in for us. But
whatever you got.
you know, growing up in our household, I have three other siblings and a very extensive family, and we were all in sports from a young age and in extracurriculars and went to private school K through 12, and my parents were involved in the community. And growing up in, number one, a private school culture, K through 12, it was very, I learned from a young age, this is the way that you behave. These are the things that you do. Anything else was a fear of being bad or sinful or very fear based. And so I learned early on that when I performed within this set of rules very well, I would be rewarded or praised. So, you know, you don't skip school when you go to private school. You are there on time. Like there are a lot of structures in place where it's very strict. And so that was very much in my household as well. And so I would, if these are the rules, I'm going to do them perfectly because then I'm getting praise and I'm getting pats on the back and I'm getting rewarded, which, okay, that must equal goodness, right? I'm good if I'm getting straight A's. I'm good if it's perfect attendance. It's good if I'm, the best at this sport and on varsity. And if I'm nominated as, the president of the class or all of these different things, if I can be a high achiever in all of these different areas, then it makes me worthy in all of these other people's eyes, my parents
Mm.
and everybody else. And so the more I did that, the more, again, that became my identity is this is who I am and what I'm doing. And I got an academic scholarship to college. And this was really the first time that I started experimenting with this idea of like, ew, something's off, something's not aligned here. So I had gotten an academic scholarship to college. There was also a lot of talk about me playing volleyball, which I had been playing at a highly competitive level, if I was going to play volleyball in college. And so that was the first time that I remember being like, I think I want something different. Like I've played sports from the time I could walk year round, all of the time. Sports were such a big part of my life. I think I want to try something else in college. Like, I don't think I want sports to be my identity anymore. Let me see what else is out there. And so I went to college on an academic scholarship and I got there and I was doing all of the things that I thought I was supposed to do. I joined the sorority that I knew a ton of girls in already, and school was so easy for me. When I got into college and I was like, oh man, one really amazing thing about private school is it is a really incredible education. Like, college felt like a cakewalk. And I just was miserable. And I'm like, I don't get it. School's easy. This is what's come easy for me. I'm not doing volleyball. I'm in this sorority that I know so many people in. And I was really miserable. And that turned into just an absolute downward spiral on my health. And I had always been doing makeup on the side, doing makeup for friends, doing makeup for school, um, taking free classes anytime I could with MAC Cosmetics. And so again, I'm like fast forwarding this, but when my health really started to decline and I left the sorority and I sort of just had this complete unraveling and told my parents, like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I know that I'm supposed to go to college. I know that we grew up with this idea, and this is what we do in the town that I'm in, is you go to college for 4 years and you get a degree and you get a job and you work really hard and you are in that for the rest of your life. And I'm like, but this isn't working for me. And it's not because school is hard. I'm checking that box. But I want to be an esthetician. I want to pursue this passion of mine. So that was really the first time that I started to explore that. So I went to esthetician school, and around that time where I had just dabbled in like saying yes to myself and listening to this inner voice, my parents, who had been together for 30 years, married for 25, got a divorce. So here I am, I've already, shaken up the status quo of my life, and my parents are getting a divorce, which, like, how I grew up, that is unheard of. Like,
Mm.
divorce is sinful, was born and raised Catholic, you stay together for the kids. My parents are so well known in the community. Like, everybody knows our family. They can't get a divorce. Like, so having already made this choice to go against the norm and then seeing my parents going against this norm, it started to make me question, like, whose ideas have I been subscribed to this whole time? Who's making this shit up? Like, who's saying, who's writing the book on what we're supposed to do? And anyway, so again, trying to make this a bit condensed, but that's really when I started to try and figure out, like, what feels good for me?
Yeah.
What feels true for me? Not because I've been taught it, not because my teacher said it's the way to go, not because the Catholic faith said it's the way to go, not because this is what everybody in my small town does. Like, what feels true for me?
Yeah.
And I got it really wrong for a very long time because it was just sort of this like guess and test of, let's try this on for size and what feels good. But when I started to ask those questions and not just subscribe to everything that was being fed to me, it is when I started to learn more about, like we said, what is honest for me? What feels self-loving for me, even if other people don't understand it? Even if people don't understand you had an academic scholarship and you left college to not get a degree, you've been a straight A student your whole life, and now you're going to not get a college degree. And so I think it just starts with asking yourself the question, what beliefs have I been just blindly following and subscribed to? And maybe it's not this family history like me or your faith or your community. Maybe it's just what we're getting fed online all of the time. Having the ability to be introspective and journal and start to think about other options is really where that started for me. And it is like kind of just trying stuff on for
Mm-hmm.
size and learning more about yourself along the way. But again, that requires some flexibility within that authenticity definition of
Mm-hmm.
this might feel authentic now, but I need to be okay if I change my mind tomorrow. I think we get so wrapped into those labels and those titles. I'm Catholic. I'm a straight A student. I'm blah, blah, blah. It's okay saying, I'm not totally sure what my label is or what my identity is, but like I'm okay exploring it. I'm okay
Yeah.
figuring that out.
Yeah. I would love to hear your thoughts on, like you said, like we're so label happy. And we talked a little bit about like how we like to understand each other and ourselves and whatever. But like, I wonder, is there any, you probably have lots of thoughts of like, why? Why are we so label happy? Like, why is that such a compulsion? Why are we so afraid to stand naked and labelless
Mhm.
in the
I
world?
really think that there's a sense of fear of the unknown, and we're all looking, I think, of a few things. One is I do think it comes from a place of fear and like self-preservation, is if I can know what to predict with this person, then I will know how to interact with them. And there's safety in naming something rather than this,
Mm,
ambiguous person who could, change or be unpredictable at any time. It's like there's safety in knowing somewhat what you're going to say or what you're about or what you're going to do. You're not going to say anything that makes me uncomfortable. You're not going to say anything that makes me question myself. Like you can very predictably know how to interact with that person and then choose or not choose to engage with that person further. It's like we tend to, politics obviously are heavy in the current climate right now. So it's like, okay, well, if I know where you stand, then I know that you're not going to say anything that's going to be combative
mm,
or disruptive to my system. And so I think that we try and label people in an effort to make ourselves feel safe. And I also think that there is this fear of the unknown. And I think when we can, my mind's going a lot of different places. I think people are very just genuinely disconnected with themselves. And so if you are saying, you know, in your authentic expression of yourself, Carly, if you're saying like, I'm this, but tomorrow I might be this, holding up that mirror to me who might be feeling like, oh, no, 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 I needed to label you as this. I think it's less about, I think there's the aspect of me not having the predictability with how I'm going to interact with you, but it's also this discontent within me of, well, if she's changing her label, what does that mean for me and all of these things that I've attached to in my own life? Like that feels
mm,
scary. That feels,
mm.
what does that say about myself? If I'm not this thing, that everybody has told me I am for my whole life. And that can just feel scary and yucky. So I think
Yeah.
it's both ways of not knowing how to predict my interaction with you, but then also like, ooh, what does that mean for myself if I'm allowed to change my mind or change my label or change my identity?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like everything that you just said, I think is absolutely what's going on often at an unconscious level when we're doing this. Like we're trying to make ourselves safe, mostly with almost everything we do. And that it also goes back to like what you were saying too about like the climate you grew up in of like good versus bad. Like I'm
Mm,
trying to
yeah.
get praised. I'm trying to get rewarded and I'm trying to avoid punishment.
Hmm.
And I like labeling with certain things. Like one that comes to mind that like I've heard it thrown around quite a lot and it always has like the same tone of voice when the person says it. They're like, "Well, I have ADHD." Okay.
Mm,
And like that's just one example of a label that
yeah.
people are like excited to put that on themselves
Hmm.
in these examples that I've like heard. And I think there's like a understanding the part that was getting us punished. Like
Mm,
understanding the part that like doesn't fit in the box or like there yeah like just like a self understanding like almost like a validation
yeah, like a
piece
justification.
of like see this is why I'm like this,
Yeah,
like I have like something to a foundation to like put that part of myself and like now it's allowed to be because it has a
a hundred
name,
percent.
you know
Mm-hmm.
and like I remember parts of my journey that felt like that. I'm like, see,
Yeah,
I'm just an INTJ on
yeah,
Myers-Briggs. Like, that's why I'm
yeah.
like this and this and this. And it was like so validating and affirming of like, you're not an alien, you're
Yeah.
an INTJ. I could like
Hmm.
have a shirt made that says that.
Yeah.
But now I think I think that's like a part of the journey that maybe helps us break out of that first box. But
Hmm.
then those are the pieces that become the second box, you know?
Yeah. Such a
Like,
good point.
yeah, it's like all coming
Yeah.
together here.
It's so interesting because, we all love those personality tests and things like that. And people who are so attached to like, well, this is, my, here's my astrological profile,
Hmm.
this is why I'm this,
Hmm.
or that person is such a, and it's exactly like you said, where we're using this as, okay, well, see, this is why I'm this person. And we get so caught up in that as the identity rather than a tool to help us understand ourselves.
Yeah.
And I do think that that's such a huge thing. And, people who know their birth chart or, know their Myers-Briggs or know their disc profile or
Hmm.
the millions of different things out there, their human design. I think that sometimes that can feel like a really trendy thing to be doing and like this really sexy thing that we can put on of like, well, I know that I'm a Cancer,
All the things.
whatever it
Yeah.
is, all the things. And because we're so label happy and because we're so looking to know ourselves, we can say this title and identify it and try and let that be the thing that speaks about who we are. Let
Mm.
that be the thing that's like, the only thing anybody needs to know about me is I'm a Cancer sun.
Yeah.
And then they can understand the rest and it's all justified. Rather than me taking that information and what does this mean? What is my birth chart telling me? Not what it's telling the world, but what are the things that are intrinsically making up my DNA, who I am, human design, like what is unique to me, not so that I can wear that as a mask for the rest of the world to absorb, but what are my tendencies? What are the things that I'm drawn to or maybe not naturally gifted at? And letting that inform more dialogue with ourselves and more introspection and more journaling about how that has shown up in our lives, good or bad. And I don't think enough people use those as the tools that they're intended to allow you to go further into self.
Yes.
I think we use them as like a trendy, here's who I am, take it or leave it. I have this knowledge, do what you will with it. Like, I think we attach the identity to the thing rather than letting the thing be a tool to inform our own understanding of self, which
Yeah.
then, how do I want to show up? Okay, I know that this is what my human design chart says. How do I still have the power to choose how to show up? Like, how can I use those shadowy aspects of myself, not as a defense mechanism of like, well, this is just my shadow. So it's you get what you get. Or I could say, okay, these are the ways in which my shadowy aspects of self can show up. How can I use that to be better
Yeah.
moving forward?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well said. I feel like I could have given a version of that exact thing because yes, it's a tool to understand yourself better. And like when okay, so I shared before we started recording that like when I started my business, it was to do natal chart readings. And part of like diving into astrology and especially starting to read other people's charts, I joined a bunch of different Facebook groups that are like, this one's for Virgos only, and this one's for Scorpios only. And like they've got themselves all segmented out there. This one's for Cancer moons and like whatever, all the groups that I could find. And often they would let me in, even though I don't have the thing. I'm like, I'm an astrologer. I'm trying to learn about whatever. Being in all the groups, it
Mm-hmm.
was so fascinating because they would all get in there and they're like, everybody thinks that we're the most toxic sign and like blah, blah, like, and then they all think that. Or it's like,
Right,
who's the most sexual sign? And it's like, we are. And they all think that. And
right.
it's just like unhelpful at a certain point to like again label ourselves down into this box that then like you said like we wear it as a mask of like, well, I can't help it, I'm a Scorpio moon. It's
Yeah,
like, dude, okay, you've missed the point of like understanding the gifts and the shadows of every single placement. Like
yeah,
when that's one of the reasons I stopped doing readings for people because it got my blood on fire to hear them be
yeah.
like, well, but I can't do that because look here, I have a Cancer stellium. And I'm like, hello, that is potential. It could go this way
Potential.
towards gifts or like how you're using it as a crutch and an excuse of like, well, see, I'm limited. I'm like
Mm-hmm.
this. And it's like it's potential. All of it is potential.
Mm-hmm.
And then how are you using it? And you brought a word in that I want to like echo and maybe even like for our home stretch here of like, you have the power to
Mm-hmm.
choose how you're going to channel your energy,
Yeah.
period. And that's where like, how did you, and maybe this is another gigantic question, but when did you start thinking of yourself as empowered and like I have the power to choose? Do you
Mm.
remember like a clicking kind of moment?
I think about my dark night of the soul when I was in this relationship, feeling unfulfilled, feeling like I can see my life heading this one direction. It could be cool, but I think there's something else over here that I need to explore. I'm fed up with myself. I'm really tired of hating myself. I'm tired of feeling like crap every day. I'm tired of being ashamed of the choices I'm making and the people I'm hanging around and the things that I'm doing. And so that was a huge shift for me when I started to just kind of think of other possibilities over here. But the way that you presented that question is like in that moment, I certainly didn't feel any type of empowerment to like start listening to my own voice or make a choice. Um, I think I started from that place of like, I just need to try something different. Something else has got to give. And then in doing those practices, I started to realize I do have a voice. And yes, this is such a much bigger question, but I was also in an abusive relationship for a really long time. And once I got out of that relationship, it was extremely toxic. I mean, he stalked me, he sent people to my home, he called my work, he called the gym, he
Mm.
just a very traumatic time in my life. And the way that I dealt with that is what I refer to as like I went dark, I went hidden. So I completely erased myself online, any of my online presence. I changed my phone number, I moved cities, I sold my car, I made myself unsearchable, like
Wow.
completely unsearchable. And that was 9 years ago. And during those 9 years of really deep healing and introspection, it has been a journey to figuring out who I am and healing some of those wounds that kicked up. But the biggest thing for me was finding that power. I don't think it was something that just clicked because I had made, you know, all of that had happened. I went dark. I got into this relationship, realized there might be something over here, but I don't really know. So I had kind of these little moments, but it was a very inward feeling first. It's very easy, they say I think Kathy was just talking about this, where, monks who are secluded, and it's very easy to be spiritual when you're not being triggered by everything else in your life. I feel like for me, it was very easy for me to say, I have my power back. I'm claiming my power because I was doing it quietly. I was doing it within my journal. I was doing it within conversations like these that certainly weren't recorded for the public. And so now I'm learning how to reclaim that power on another platform. And
Yeah.
like, I haven't been in the public eye. I haven't had social media in 9 years. So
Mm.
understanding how to use my power that I've been trying to reclaim, but how to let it trickle outwards, not just for myself, not just when it's easy, but to be in a more public setting, talking about these really challenging times in my life and the ways I've gotten it
Mhm.
wrong and the trauma and the wounds and the pain. But it is going back to the authenticity conversation is the best thing that I can do as I'm getting this power back and understanding what this means for myself. It is being really honest with myself. It's loving myself as I am today, the good and the bad. It is having that deeper dialogue with myself and, what feels authentic to me today. And then wrapping all of that up, in your question is it's like remembering that I do have the power to choose. There are tools available to help me understand why I am the way that I am. Like all of this journey, both the combination of my upbringing, my personal experiences, and these tools that we're talking about with like human design or a birth chart, how do all of these things factor into what I believe is authentically true to myself and how I love myself? And then I have the power to choose how I want to talk about these things. I could talk about the abuse and the toxic relationship from a victim perspective, or I can do it as I'm doing right now of like, how can I help somebody else? How can we
Mm.
change this script and change this dialogue? And so I don't know if that answers your question, but I do think it just is all so intrinsically tied of this work in progress. And it really is just starting to ask yourself those questions and have those conversations with yourself. And why are you doing the things that you're doing? Is it because of an experience? Is it because you were taught this? Or can you start to claim some of your power back? Can you start to call some of that back to yourself? And this is, I mean, I'm saying this completely not as somebody who has it all figured out. I'm actively trying to do this every single day within my family, within work, within my romantic relationship is how can I call power back to myself
Yeah.
and not just be reacting based on what other people need me to be.
Mm. Yes. Yes. That was such a good final share. And I want to reflect just a couple of things to like really underline them. Because again, like as you're talking, like so many of the questions I ask are about the things that I'm like actively trying to figure out for myself. So as you're talking, I'm like crystallizing even more of my own understanding. So thank you for that. And yeah, you said a couple of things. Number one, it doesn't just click and then you have your power.
Right.
It's like, as you said, like there were these moments, and I'm like, oh, yeah, yeah, because there was a little bit right here and there was a little bit right here. And probably there will continue to be a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. That's part of the work in progress.
Yeah.
It's part of the 1 degree turns of holding a little bit more of your power because I totally went through a very similar journey of like, reclaiming my voice and my power in my journal between me and
Mm-hmm.
me. That's where it starts,
Yep.
is like, I need to
Yes.
know it. And then once I've got a decent grip on it, then I can start to be that in other relationships and kind
Mm-hmm.
of shift how I'm relating to other people. But like, I can't do that unless I've truly got some momentum started inside myself. So thank you for painting that picture. And the other thing is like, reclaim your power is something that, like you said, authenticity is like a buzzword. I think reclaim your power, it's like, well, let's put that on that list too, of like, it's so easy to say. And it's like, yeah, just do that. And it's like, what does that actually friggin' mean? When you have power, you have choice. So reclaim your power means remember you have a choice. That's it. That's all it means. And disempowerment means you're believing in that moment you have no choice.
Mm-hmm.
And empowerment means you know you have a choice and you're making it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Like that's
Yeah.
all it
And
comes down to is, are you making your choice or are you believing you don't have one?
yeah, something on that point that I've been trying to experiment with a little bit is like really pushing that power of choice. Like, okay, I wake up, I'm getting ready for work, I eat oatmeal for breakfast or whatever. Well, what if I like, this is, I have not done this, but I'm using it as an example. What if I like cooked a steak for breakfast? Like what is something that's just completely out of the norm,
Uh huh.
but is allowing me the power to choose? Or what if, I wear, I don't know, gloves for socks. I'm totally like making all of these different things, but like, what are the ways in which I could just make a choice that's not like the norm?
Yeah.
There are better examples somewhere, but these are just what's coming up right now. Of like, what am I just doing because it's what we do?
That's the right way to do it.
But then you
Like,
like remember, oh, I actually can do whatever I want.
yeah,
Like there's nobody, I'm not a puppet. Nobody's dictating the things that I'm doing or saying or eating or the way that I'm moving. It's what is something that I can just like try and do a little weirder or do a little different
yeah,
just to remember that I do have the power and the choice because I do think
yeah,
we get so caught up in like these are all of the things that we're supposed to do, that we lose it. And it's like you said, it starts with a journal. I can't echo that enough of
Hmm.
it starts with yourself and understanding your values and understanding where you've adopted these unconscious beliefs. And then what are the little ways in which you can just choose something different and like try that on for size and just
Yeah.
do something out of the norm. And the more you do it, the more you'll start to remember and realize exactly like you said, reclaiming your power isn't some big show, this big declaration necessarily on social media of like, I'm reclaiming my power. Look, look at all of these things that I'm doing. It's the little choices, it's the little moments of just how are you putting yourself first? Because I will argue if you're reclaiming your power by doing some big broadcast on social media of like, I did this meditation retreat, look at me reclaiming my power. I would argue that the audience still has the power because you're doing it for them.
For show. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the validation that other people are going to give you. Yeah.
Pats on the
It's,
back. Yeah.
and that's why, like, it's about your choice. And only you
Hmm.
know about the choices you're making,
Hmm.
And so I love that little exercise of like, find a place where you think you have no choice,
Hmm.
just even like one. And it could be something super small. And
Yeah.
then, like one, like wardrobe is such an easy example, but yeah, like you're not supposed to wear socks with sandals. I'm like, I love wearing socks with sandals,
Why not? Yeah.
especially if they got like little fish on them or like a happy face where if you put the feet together, it like makes the whole face. Like, dude, okay, there are no rules. There
There are
is
no
no rule
rules.
book for life. There are only choices and
Hmm.
how many times you want to stay in the bounds of what's right and how many times you're willing to try on the wrong way just to see if you like it better, you
Well,
know?
and it's also like then you're asking the question of who's saying it's right? Like
Exactly.
who
Who decided
whose book
this?
are you following?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. This whole podcast is about like kind of zooming out from the script that we're handed, that social conditioning that we're handed when we get here, and being able to decide for ourselves what's right, what's our truth, what
Hmm.
do we believe in today. Such a good
Hmm.
point of like that might be different than yesterday. Tomorrow might be
Yeah.
different than today, and that's okay. You're allowed to
Hmm.
change your mind. That's probably the most authentic thing you can do is change your
Yeah.
mind when your mind changes. You know,
Yeah.
nothing in nature is static. So, like,
Hmm.
staying the same is unnatural in a way,
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
have loved this so much, Coco. What would be just one final message that's on your heart, on your mind, some words you want to leave us with, and then also where can people find you if they want more?
I would just encourage you to continue to connect with self. Something that just is kind of a common theme in my own life right now, and I think fits so well with this podcast is I often say, if you don't know me today, you don't know me at all. If you haven't met me today, you don't know me because I want to be continuously discovering myself. And if I'm still discovering myself, you can't possibly know me.
Yeah.
You can't possibly understand me. And so, really encouraging people to go back to self and what do I believe? What are my core values?
Yeah.
What are the things that matter to me? And if your mind changes tomorrow, that's okay. Journal about that too, but
Yeah.
bring it back to self, that self-love and that self-care and that honesty, and try different things on for size. If you have no earthly concept of who you are, it can feel really daunting to like, well, I don't know. I've just been following these rules for my whole life or X, Y, and Z. Try different things.
Yeah.
See if you like meditation. See if you like running. See if you want to go lift weights at the gym. Just start to explore because you do have the power and you do have that choice
Yeah.
to try different things, even if nobody else understands. It's not for them to understand.
Yeah.
That's how you can learn who you are and start to be on what's a really fun and exciting journey.
Yes.
When you are starting to sort of uncover and unlearn who you are and what you like, it can be scary, but it can be really fun. So
Well
those are my
said.
words. But like I said, I'm trying to get back into the social media after 9 years of not. But you can find me on Instagram at the Self Care Sermon, and my podcast is on Spotify and Apple, and it is called Self Care Sermon.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Coco. It has been amazing to get to know you better and get to hear your words and continue to crystallize and evolve my own understanding of my authentic self as I sit here. You know, this never ending journey of authenticity that we are all on if we so choose. And yeah, I think this was super helpful for anybody listening. I'd love it if you take a second, share your comments. We'd both love to read that. Like, what was your key takeaways, your reflections? And until next time, I hope everybody is taking really good care of themselves. And so will we.
Yes. Thank you, Carly. Thank you, everyone.